Hello there, and welcome to another SimCron. This time we're going to be talking about what's been happening in Q2 of 2025 and looking forward to Q3. Let me introduce Simon Woodhead, CEO of SimWood, and Charles Chance, CTO of SimWood. How are you, gents, today?
Very good, thanks, David.
Likewise, really good. Thanks, David.
Good. It's great to have you along, and regular viewers will know that our format is to just take a little look back at things that have been achieved in the previous quarter before a conversation that covers what will be going on in the next quarter. And one of the most exciting things that has been happening is the advances in conversational AI in the world of SimWood, and particularly, Charles, within the last quarter, the inclusion of webhooks. Or Simon, whoever would like to talk about that should talk.
I think that's definitely a Charles thing, although you've been talking about it a fair bit, flying around the world.
Yes, I've loved demoing conversational AI, and the little twist of making the conversational AI reference whoever the host of a particular conference is, has generated smiles and laughter in places all the way from St. Petersburg, Florida, to Berlin, Germany. So yeah, I've been enjoying doing that.
But yeah, Charles, why don't you give us your perspective on those two features that you've added, essentially?
Yeah, can do. I mean, both webhooks, but both used in slightly different ways. But in combination, the two just sort of make the whole thing flow nicely. So as we discussed last time, we started with post call webhooks. All programmatically received, of course, with a transcription of the conversation that's occurred, along with a summary and some kind of temperature type analysis of the conversation just out of the box, which is great because if you just want to dump that into a CRM or into a database, it's perfect. The challenge is when you want some structured information to be able to actually act on it programmatically. It's a little bit difficult to do so from a summary, from a natural language type of a summary or transcription. So in order to get things like form completions working and to be able to do, KYC or onboarding type activities, we introduced something called data collection items. So you can actually configure in advance items of data, specific fields that you want completing. So that could be an application form. It could be just a general inquiry form. But you pre-configure those on the agent when and also give it a short kind of line of text as to how the LLM will obtain the information or infer that information from the conversation. So once the conversation's ended, it goes away. It obviously transcribes, summarizes, but then goes and finds the relevant bits of information and populates those fields for you. So when in the webhook that's returned at the end of the call, you have a much more structured piece of data and information that you can insert into wherever you need or use it as you will. So we enhanced post-call webhooks with that data collection, but we also added pre-call webhooks, which allow you at the beginning of the call or at the inception of the call to be able to enrich the context of the conversation. So you're given in that pre-call webhook information such as the caller ID, which would allow you to go and look up an existing customer to see whether it's recognised, and be able to, if there is a match, pass the name of the customer to the agent, so the agent can actually greet the customer by name, if that's how you want to handle the call. It can also be used for things like giving it context of previous phone calls, previous issues, anything you like. You can just give that agent more context to be able to hold a much sort of more personalised conversation with the caller.
Right, and so from a practical point of view, Charles, as a call comes in and say the caller ID is picked up, what's the actual mechanism for inserting that into the webhook and then making the call, presumably before the call is answered?
Yeah, indeed. So when we send the pre-call webhook, we actually give you opportunity to respond to it. So it looks just like any other webhook. It's a post HTTP post request to your endpoint. But rather than just it being asynchronous by default, a sort of send and forget, we will wait for a response. So up to 5 seconds is the default. Now we in practice, that should be plenty. We're happy to receive feedback as to whether that should be customizable, whether it needs to be extended. Of course, if you respond quicker, brilliant. But the maximum it will wait around for a response is 5 seconds. In that time, the caller will hear ringing. So it won't connect to the agent, and from the caller's perspective, it's just as if they're waiting for somebody to answer. So in that ringing period, we send you a webhook, a request to your endpoint on your server. You can do your lookup. You can return to us the contextual information that you want to include, if any. Once it's responded, we'll then continue to answer the call. The agent will continue to answer the call. And act upon the information that's been provided. If you just return an OK, just an empty response, then it will continue without that additional context, as it would have done if it hadn't have sent the pre-call webhook in the first place.
Great stuff, yeah, and this is hugely powerful, isn't it? We're talking about it in these sort of abstract terms, but actually this is the power of passing information from one call to another, and as you said,
well, that's the bit I was just going to bring up. So having the post call webhooks with the structured data is powerful in itself. That's what I've referred to in the past as type form for voice, because you could have really complicated forms, and the agent won't lose track of what information needs collecting, and will just populate those fields throughout a natural language conversation. But one of the things that we talked about last quarter, which was a stretch target for last quarter, which sadly we didn't get to, but we're going to get to this quarter, aren't we, Charles? Is agents being able to transfer calls. So we need to not think of this post and pre-call in the context of a whole call, but in the context of a dialogue. So we talk about looking up based on the caller ID, but if it's, for example, a banking application, you're not going to authenticate somebody on their caller ID. You're potentially going to have a more natural language conversation with them and authenticate them on other things like last transaction, or balance, or mother's maiden name, or whatever. That could potentially be two segments of a call between two instances of an agent, where you've got the pre-call, the post-call, and the post-call for one becomes the pre-call for another. And so your second call can be for an authenticated customer who you know who it is. The first call can be for a customer who you suspect who it is from the caller ID, but you need to do some basic checks. And you piece things together like that, and you have a workflow based on that, and they actually get like really, really powerful. The other thing you've done this quarter, Charles, is surface those agents from carrier services up into SIP-centric. And up into the hosted platform. So end user SMEs can get their hands on them, and they can replace voice. They can replace voicemail, and they can have order taking and basic functions like that, which frankly otherwise they're not going to get access to. So that's really, really exciting, I think, to be able to push those out to to end users. But I think you've got a demo on that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. It's a pre-recorded demo, so if you're happy for me to show it here, then I'll be very happy to. You'll see that the focus has been on usability and the ability, as you quite rightly pointed out. The SMEs, particularly at the smaller end of the SME market, wouldn't generally have access to this sort of stuff, but the power and the potential for improving their businesses through the use of this, whether it's just a call answering service, or whether it's a order taking or form filling type of an agent, the opportunities really are endless. There is an immense amount of power and control in there at the carrier services level, which would just be too much for an end user at that sort of level to consume. So what we've tried to do is just to show how this can be made widely available to the market, and we've done that by actually adding a nice sort of wizard interface for creating an agent where you select a role, and you can select from a predefined list of set of templates, and then you can give it just in a few words a description of what you want it to achieve, and then we'll use AI to generate a prompt for the AI, which is really just it's obvious when you think about it. Using the power of AI in order to benefit from the power of AI, and we've obviously prompted that secondary AI with best practices for creating prompts, and a structure for a prompt, so that it takes that natural language input from the end user, generates a really well formed prompt that covers everything for the role that they've selected and the industry that their business is in, and then it becomes an agent on their PBX, an extension to send calls to, just like any other.
Awesome.
So here we go. Let me show you the demo, and it should all become clear and apparent. Just how nicely presented it is, and actually it's a demonstration of what can be achieved by consuming what we've already delivered on the carrier services. Thanks for joining. I'm here today to give you just a very brief tour of the new conversational AI feature or add-on that has been deployed on the hosted platform, available now for partners and end users alike, but very much in beta. So you will need to request access to it for now, and of course feedback, as always, is very welcome. So I'm going to demo to you virtual agents, which is the first feature deployed in the conversational AI set. Here on the menu is the new item. It's an endpoint which you can direct calls to, just like any other. But the first step, of course, is to add one. So I'm going to add two ways to do this. A very straightforward blank agent creation. I'm accepting the number it's suggesting there, but you can customize that as any other endpoint. But you'll see that the agent created is very minimal. It has a basic first message and system prompt, but the system prompt is crucial, really, to the agent performing its role to the best of its ability or capability, and more importantly, for constraining it and making sure that it doesn't go off task or off on a tangent and start answering questions which are completely non-relevant and potentially giving away information that you don't want it to. So the prompt is very important, but if you've not created one or drafted one before, then it can be quite difficult to get started. So what we've also added is a guide or a wizard which will have a prompt, very complete prompt following best practice generated for you, which you can then tweak and evolve according to your needs. It will ask you for your industry to get some context or to adjust the agent's tone and approach accordingly. And there's some examples here of some use cases. You're not limited to these. You can add your own custom use case if you like, but for now I'm going to just add a very basic answering service for demonstration purposes. I'll click next here, and this is where it gets the seeding of the information, if you will. I'm going to call it Alex, but a very brief description of its role is all that's required. I have one that I wrote earlier. This agent is simply going to answer overflow calls, sales calls, and capture the caller's contact details and a brief summary of their inquiry for a callback later. Of course, an agent could be technical support, offer technical support based on the knowledge base. It could answer general sales inquiries itself. But I'm going to keep it simple for this demo and give it the website address. That's quite important. It's optional, but important if you want it to have full context of your business, what you do. And we click done. Goes away and thinks about it for a while, 8 to 10 seconds maybe. And there we go. There's Alex, our newly created virtual agent. You'll see the prompt here now that's been generated for you is very detailed. Yeah, it goes through various personality, the environment, its goal, etc., and importantly, guardrails. Okay, so it's not making any commitments on behalf of the company. It's not offering personal opinions or advice. But then all that's left for you to do is to perhaps add a welcome message, pre-written. Maybe adjust the temperature, the tone of the call. Some quick presets. I'm going to make this somewhere in the middle in terms of creativity and predictability. There are lots of other things that you can adjust in here, but the only other thing I'm going to do for now is change the voice. You can preview the voices in here, so you can hear what they sound like, along with a description. But once you're happy with one, choose it or select it, and we save that. Okay, that agent is ready to use. It's got a very detailed brief, which is great because it's going to be very focused on its task, on its role, and what it's designed to do. What we need to do is get calls to it, and as this is a sales overflow assistant, I am going to go to the sales group and configure that agent as a failover destination. And that's it. Quite simply, we have created in just a few minutes a virtual agent powered by AI, which will answer your calls, has full context and information about your company and services from your website. It has its defined characteristics and style and tone of voice and all those sorts of things, and it will do a great job of taking that call, summarising, collecting the information that you've asked for, and summarising it in an email to your team so that they can follow up with a callback, armed with details of the call and a full transcription, and optionally recording if needed. That's it for the demo. That concludes that for today. But please do feel free to request access, give us your feedback, because we are this is under active development, of course, and any early feedback is very welcome.
That's awesome. I can see Mr. Duffett is going to be an absolute menace when he gets his hands on that. Very good.
Just a little pause onto that. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Because really, any PBX user can now have a virtual assistant or an out of hours. Like you said, Charles, the possibilities are endless. One thing I did want to say though is even on the carrier services side, as you said, there are a large number of levers that you can adjust. But I did want to make the point that the defaults that you've set on a lot of these things, like temperature, speed, and those kind of things, they work incredibly well. And so even on the carrier services side, it's possible to set something up very, very quickly indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking about webhooks there. So, really dirty segue. You've done a bit of work on porting webhooks this quarter. Now, I think, to be perfectly honest, these were things that were documented that we weren't actually sending, which was helpfully pointed out by one of our customers. So there's been some backfilling there. But I wanted to chat briefly about porting automation, actually, because there's some really interesting effects going on from my point of view. So we introduced porting automation. We introduced a credit against the port for those that were consuming it fully, which not everybody can consume it to 100%. We have some customers that are consuming it to 100%, but some of the ability to automate it depends on, frankly, who you're porting from and how well behaved they are. But we have got customers achieving 100%. The average at the moment is sort of mid 50%. And there's a lot gone on in the background to improve the level of automation as well as the webhooks. But the effect I wanted to talk about briefly was I in my head viewed automation as a sort of one hit thing. We'll automate it, people will consume it. That's the end of it. But what we're actually seeing is we're seeing a push from customers where they're using the APIs to submit ports. They're consuming webhooks on the back end. They're then building more and more automation their side, which is exposing a wish list and a desire for more in the way of webhooks and control from our side, which is brilliant. It's this self-reinforcing cycle that is pushing things forward and hopefully improving end user experience, which is fantastic to see. I mean, personally, I love it when we build things and people engage with it and they want more and they get excited about it.
I was just going to say, Simon, it's very hard to imagine that symbiotic relationship where some other carriers are concerned that might not be as agile and as forward thinking.
Yeah, where you wait 10 years for a SIP trunk or something. Yeah, something similar. Mentioning no names. Otherwise I'll get a retort in a newsletter. But yeah, moving on. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. I don't think it probably helps us to go through like bullet point by bullet point what we're doing, because there are some quite high level things that we're starting this quarter that are going to run for multiple quarters. But the first thing that again has come out of this feedback loop with customers is we've come to appreciate that we've been a bit lazy with regard to our documentation. The doc site, the API site at developer.simwood.com is relatively up to date, but we have a bad habit of bringing out new shiny things and not being as on top of the documentation as we should be. So one of the objectives this quarter for Charles's team is a documentation refresh. So some of the new stuff is properly documented, and people haven't got to self-document effectively as they play with this new stuff. So hopefully that will be a plus. The other I was going to say discrete unit of work, but it's not really a discrete unit of work. It's a starter that's going to evolve. Is vCons, which I know you're intimately familiar with, David, because you've been to about 184 conferences on them. But do you want to give people that aren't familiar with vCons a sort of 5-second?
Yeah, I've certainly taken an interest in vCons as something that is going to revolutionise our sector. So lots of voices are saying, and some very serious players have been working to create standards. One of those being Thomas McCarthy Howe from Strolid. I think he's responsible for the IETF RFC that covers vCons, and Skit. So let's deal with vCons first. vCon is virtualized conversation. And when the untrained ear hears that, they tend to think about voice bots and stuff like that. And it's not that at all. A virtualized conversation is either a V card or could also be thought of as a PDF for a voice call. So just like a PDF encapsulates a document, but it's got some metadata about that document as well. So a vCon can encapsulate a voice call in terms of a recording of the voice call or a transcript of the voice call, but it can also have many other things around it, all the metadata like who called who, for how long and when, all the way through to sentiment analysis and all sorts of things. So that's a very powerful universal format that everybody who's authorized can use. And the key is who's authorized, because of course this data is hugely valuable. You could actually use it, as Charles was saying earlier, about using the AI to create some prompts for AI. Well, vCons could be, amazing food for AI technology. And so there's also the aspect of who's allowed to see it. And this is where this thing called SCIT comes in, SCITT, which is supply chain integrity, transparency, and trust. And it's a way of defining who's authorized to look at data. And interestingly, it's also prompting further conversations. You've heard, when you ring up, it says this call may be used for training and quality control purposes. Well, there's another dimension now that, this call may be used to feed an AI system. And so I know that from a regulatory point of view, the wheels are turning on that. Does that give enough background, Simon?
Yeah, I think that the highlight there is that it's everything to do with the call encapsulated in one document. So if you look at things from a Simwood perspective, I think we'll be the first carrier to implement this. Other people that have implemented it, like Thomas in his own business, are more at the enterprise level. But we publish CDRs. They're in a Simwood format. They're not in an industry standard format. We do call recording, we do sentiment analysis, we have the agents. They all have outputs, but somebody needs to integrate with Simwood to consume those outputs. My vision of vCon is that, whereas somebody might download a CDR at the moment, they can download a vCon for a given call, and everything relating to that call from a Simwood perspective is contained within it. The beauty is that they can then store that locally, or they can post-process it. They can run it through other third-party services to redo some of the translation or other things on it. So that interoperability is where it becomes powerful from my point of view. But from a Simwood perspective, it's packaging everything into one file, like you say, like a V card or like a PDF. You want to change your contact manager, you just drag your V cards into a different one. You want to change carrier, heaven forbid, then you take your vCons from one, you've got your vCons from the other, and they should be interoperable, assuming other people, of course, implement the standard.
And just to be technical a little bit, the format is JSON, isn't it? That's the format that the information is stored inside the vCon.
Yeah, it is, Jason. That's it. Obviously, where there's bytes and sort of binary data from recordings, that's all base64 encoded, and encrypted, signed. Security is a big focus in vCons, of course, and verifying that it's not been tampered with, and all of this sort of nice stuff, all in one document, delivered in JSON format.
That's a really good point, actually, Charles. Because as well as the permissions, there's the ability to do various other things. So we provide a call recording. We can sign that as a Simwood signed call recording, and somebody can check that it hasn't been messed with afterwards. In a similar way to DocuSign will attest an electronically signed document. So that makes it even more powerful for those that embrace it. So we're kicking off on that. The other thing, which is I suggested it as a single quarter objective, and Charles got a little bit cross. But our portal could do with some love. People say it's way ahead of others out there, but frankly, what's there was done 10 plus years ago. So it needs, at the very least, a reskin. But I think you've got some architectural changes under the hood you want to make as well, Charles, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just knowing what's coming in terms of new developments and things, that and the API behind it, all needs looking at together. But the outcome from that will be next level.
Brilliant. And that's not a thing to expect this quarter because, like
No.
I say, Charles has made it far more complicated and long running than I originally envisaged. But on the face of it, it'll look better. But yeah, there'll be some big changes under the hood. Some would call it magic, but I won't be so tacky.
At the risk of just going slightly out of order and back to vCons for a minute, but they, of course, will be part of the webhook, won't they? The post-call webhook that will make them available.
It
But the
will.
other thing I wanted to ask, and this is, an open question, is you talked about making vCons available to people at the end of the call, like through the webhook. Do you see SimWord having conserver functionality? So we, store the vCons for people, authorized people to come and access.
I think there's a conversation there that we haven't had. Our general approach with customer data is that it's a hot potato. I know from a commercial point of view, everybody else would say, well, control the data, then you can charge for access to it, and people are dependent on you. I don't view the world that way. As you'll see with our call recording solution, we take the customer's own storage as a destination, and we minimize how long we are touching it for, and then we just push it off to them. My default answer is I see vCons working in the same way. Although when you talk about being able to download a vCon from a CDR and that type of thing, there is implicitly a storage there, but we do store CDRs. So I view that as more a generation on demand type thing. But as soon as you start adding in call recordings and transcriptions, some of the AI stuff we're doing, then my default answer is that they need to be generated immediately and pushed off immediately, notwithstanding requests and feedback from customers who want us to do that. And if they do, then of course we'll consider it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Simon. It really fits in with the SimWood theme of putting the client or the customer in the driving seat for all of this stuff, doesn't it?
Well, there's a balance there, isn't there? Because what we don't want to do is provide 90% of a service and the customer has got to struggle to develop the other 10% themselves. If we can do the 100%, but equally we don't want to provide the 100% for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Historically, we've done the 90%, and the customers have built on the other 10% very, very ably themselves, and they've made something that's 200% better, and they've all done it differently. They're not just reselling the same service under a different name. They're generally creating value. But as always, we'll listen to customer priorities and customer feedback on that, I think.
Not forgetting, of course, this feature from probably 2 or 3 quarters ago now, the external storage, pluggable external storage. That this lends itself really well for vCons and other things moving forward. It's just recordings at the moment, but this makes perfect sense to be able to do it, and it's so easy to set up an S3 bucket on AWS or on some S3 compatible storage, self-hosted if you're that way inclined. And just connect it in the portal, and anything that's created will just be offloaded straight into your own storage. It reduces risk for us, it reduces risk for you, and your end users, your customers as well. So yeah, that's probably the way it will go to begin with. Feedback from users along the way is welcome, as Simon said.
Great.
And crucial.
So these things that we've talked about so far are really serving SimWood customers by adding features and functionality and revamping the portal over a long time. But we also serve customers very well by saving them from things and taking things out rather than adding them in.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah, you've done this before, haven't you? Yeah. So yeah, that brings us on to nuisance calling, where you get, as you'll have seen from the blogs, we're removing well over 3 million calls a month, or 3 million attempted calls a month from the network. which I would suggest is more as a proportion than anybody else. But we're not done. As you will have seen on the blogs, we could remove 38% of calls today just by enforcing Ofcom's rules, but that would bring with it a load of false positives due to, frankly, 20 years of misconfigured or lazy configured devices and networks. So we need the regulator to bring up the rear really and make everybody else care about this before we race too far ahead and end up our customers and us suffering as a result because of false positives and businesses not getting the calls they expect to get. But we've got a webinar that we've talked about on the blog. We haven't set a date for it yet because we're trying to collect interest. There's hopefully a QR code up there. If you want to register for that, some of you have registered 2 or 3 times. You're that keen, given we've mentioned it on a few blog posts. But as soon as we've given it enough time to get some decent interest and get a good volume of people on there, then we'll set a date for that, and we'll be presenting some of the data we've got on this stuff and some of the learning that we've got on this stuff, which without being too cocky, I would suggest is more than exists anywhere else. We've had some interesting conversations with the regulator around that data already, and that was the feeling.
I was going to use the phrase, Simon, industry leading.
Yes. Well, it's reminiscent for me of back in the fraud day when everybody was talking about it, but we were actually doing the research. We were putting the data out there. The data was sought by the biggest carriers in the world, and we were building solutions into our product based on that. It's still the best in the industry, even though we haven't touched large parts of it for 10, 15 years. But I think that's the difference between talking about things and actually putting your money where your mouth is, which is what we try to do, which I know upsets people, but frankly, I don't care, because at the end of it, there's customers and customers of customers that are being scammed and losing money, and that's what we should all care about. So yeah, I'd encourage anybody watching to register for that webinar. We're not going to tell you how to, as Pete likes to say, give you a Haynes manual, but I think most of the audience probably won't know what the hell a Haynes manual is, although I suspect you've got a few for the Jags, David, kicking about. But yeah, we're not going to tell you how the nuisance calling algorithms work or how to circumvent them. So don't bother putting your name down if that's what you're looking for. But if you want to understand where we're going, what we're thinking, what we're seeing, and how that could be affecting you on both sides, be it potential for you being a false positive, which is pretty rare now, or why your customers aren't seeing incoming calls and what you could do to improve that and stop more in the way of scam calls. That webinar is hopefully it. So yeah, register on that. But we're making more changes on that as well. One of the well, they're all exciting for me actually. Maybe I'm a bit weird, but one of the exciting ones is I've asked Charles's team kindly if we can have a spam button in VertiCall, and an API endpoint that does the same for those customers that don't use VertiCall. They've got some other solution, because one of the things we'll discuss on the webinar is that, unlike email, where you can look at the content of an email and very quickly see whether it's scam or spam or not, with a phone call you've really just got the metadata, who it's from, who it's to, what the behavior of those 2 numbers typically is. If we have the ability for somebody after a call to say no, that was that was a scam, and push that button, that gives us more data to block calls like that in future, and we can learn from it. So
right.
David,
so the back end of that button is effectively SimWood network intelligence that you're building.
The reports will go into our nuisance call algorithms. Obviously, we're not going to block a call because somebody's pressed the button once for somebody they don't like. There's more processing of that needed behind the scenes, but it's all about data. The more data we've got, the better.
Yeah, I'm thinking back in the asterisk days of the do not call list. How will you help end users to differentiate between a block this number, I didn't like it, and this is real spam that should be avoided by everybody?
I don't think that matters. Just like Google don't. There's a spam button that you use as you see fit, and the algorithm needs to weed out those users who use it for every other email they get because they don't like getting emails,
Right.
through to those who use it very sparingly, when it's really appropriate. So you need multiple reports for a given number from people that have proved themselves credible, diligent, users, and it's just one set of data amongst many. We're never going to block a call purely on the basis of those reports, but we've got all of this other data. The other exciting one, although it's going to be contentious, it's going to involve conversations with the regulator, and it's going to involve some very clear privacy disclosures to customers, is that we want to have the ability to take a tap of one side of the call. And so how I see this working is, at the moment, we know from our data who's bad. We know from our data who's good. But there's a lot in between. And in that in between, that sort of grey area is where, if you make the wrong choice, either it's a false positive and a business doesn't get a phone call that it should, or you let a call through and an old lady gets scammed out of her life savings. So I want the ability to say, right, this number is dodgy, it's borderline, this user has opted in to this service, and we're going to listen, or have an AI processing the call recording, to the one side of the call. So it's not intercept in the sense of listening to both. We're just, the caller is the incoming call. Let's listen to what the caller's saying. Are they pretending to be an engineer from Microsoft? Are they asking for bank details? There's a whole load of triggers where, without listening to the whole call and without truly violating privacy, if it is a legitimate call, we can just sample the caller side and again inform our data, so that grey area becomes smaller, and the white and the black become larger.
Right. And at the moment, I suppose this is post-call processed, is it? Or is it in real time?
Both. So I'll come on to something, but yeah, the easy way to do it at the moment would be post-call. I want to do it in call, real time. And the reason for that is because an evolution of this, and I mentioned these are features that we're kicking off rather than delivering this quarter, is I see a solution there which is two-way. And what I mean by two-way is, let's take one of our residential customers, an old lady, to give it a stereotype, that receives a call. I can see her opting into a service where we have, I don't know why I'm on the phone, where we have an agent listening to that call and just protecting her. And protecting her in the sense that it's listening live for certain keywords, certain triggers, certain signs of stress, signs of upset. That there's various things that we can monitor, and then when they're detected, can whisper to her.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So Doris, should you really be giving your bank details to somebody that has never called you before?
Yeah. Well,
Or
it strikes me that it's a little bit like these days when you're doing a banking transaction on your app, and it sort of wants to double check with you. Is this
yeah,
a known member of the family, or are you paying an invoice or whatever?
yeah.
That whisper could say, suspected scam in progress here.
Yeah, and I get nuisance calls all the time. Usually sales calls rather than scam calls. To be fair, and I have no patience with them, and they tend to last about 3 seconds. But I'm a you know I'm a healthy bloke that lives with his family. I'm fairly confident in having that conversation. An elderly person that has been conditioned to be polite to people, that lives on their own, is very easily bullied and intimidated by these people. And just having a voice in their ear saying, look, you really shouldn't do that, is a little bit like having their daughter across the kitchen listening to the call in the background and just giving them some tips. And I think we can do massive good with that. I see applications for it way beyond nuisance calls. But one of the things we want to deliver is that as a product, for nuisance calls, for not just residential users, but to opt in from
Well,
any of the seats.
yeah, I could see that being a very valuable service for things like sheltered accommodation as well. Where elderly people live independently and they've got their own lines of communication, but there's a warden or something present. Could be alerts and all sorts. Couldn't there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's innumerable things that customers could build on this, because of course you've still got the post-call webhooks, you've still potentially got the transcription, you've still got vCons. Somebody could build a really nice, very targeted, product on the back of some of this stuff. But the primary use case for all of the component parts, as I see it, is protecting all people from nuisance calls, frankly. But those underlying pieces have so many more applications. The one I talk about quite often is, when I did mountain rescue. Let's say I was the medic with a casualty. One of my colleagues would be what we called the scribe, and they would have a form to fill in with observations like, heart rate, pupil dilation, all of that type of thing. And it was incredibly powerful when you were the person on the spot, having somebody whisper in your ear saying, you haven't taken the pulse for 10 minutes, and prompting you to do that kind of thing. And I can think of so many examples that involve telephony, where giving somebody a voice in their ear that knows the process manual, that knows what should happen, could be really powerful. Now, that still gives the human the choice. They can ignore it. They can make a judgment to do something differently. So it's different to put in an AI there that just follows the book and gets it wrong sometimes. The human can decide to buck the process, but the human can't ever be guilty of not knowing what the process was, because they're picked up, they're picked up and whispered in their ear. So I think that whole thing is potentially huge, and I think customers can do massive things with it. If they work with us and build, build on it.
Yeah. An AI can never be affected or hampered by the heat or the emotion of a situation. It's going to be consistent all the time. And as you say, the human then can make a decision to buck the process or to act, based on experience and things. But that calm, consistent, just whispering in the ear could mean the difference, between a good and a bad outcome of a situation. Yeah.
And based on network information, I suppose it would be possible to do a pre-call warning as well. Before you are, because we're used to looking at mobile phones and seeing suspected scam, or maybe even a quick call, eye on the caller ID. But coming back to a stereotypical older person, they might not even have a display on their phone. So to pick up the phone and to actually hear a little whisper saying, "This might be a scam call. Be on your guard." It could make the difference.
Yeah.
This is David Duffett calling. Try and flog you a book. Be careful.
I think I've given more away, actually.
I'm very grateful for mine. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Plug.
Yeah, so there you go. You'll plug for the book. So this is all AI, and yet we've already been talking about what has been achieved in our conversational AI, but the work is not finished in the realm of conversation.
It's a massive ongoing thing, and there's way more to come. We talked last time about attended transfer. So the ability for a conversational AI agent to answer a call, have a chat with somebody, and then think, actually, you need to speak to Steve, putting the call through to Steve and relaying to him what's been said so far. So that's on the list. We've also been
just to jump in very quickly, Simon, thus removing one of the most massive frustrations of all callers to various services,
losing that
blaming
context.
themselves more than once and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is massive, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing is we've been really clear, and that is perhaps, me wanting to going over the top with being clear about this. We've been really clear. We haven't reinvented the voice agent. What we've done is give it telephony, and so we have the ability to plug in, a variety of actual agents behind the scenes. However, what we've recognised is that there's things that they do that we could do better. And whilst some of them are plugging in telephony because there's demand for it, which is where we started, plugging the telephony into what they'd got. Frankly, what they're doing is crap. So there's real opportunity for us to take the telephony integration that we've done and are doing, and replace key bits of the AI agent or the voice agent behind the scenes with something on net. And that's a long process. That's not a this quarter process, but you'll start to see those coming through discrete functions, and ultimately the whole thing existing on net. That's not to say we're never going to use an external text to speech engine, because they frankly do things better, but it does give us the option that for certain sensitive customers we could at some point be in a position for the whole thing to exist on net and us not be sending things to Google or wherever for transcriptions. That's the long range perspective on that. But another one I wanted to come back to, which kind of relates to what we were just talking about with the nuisance calling, but again I think is a massively powerful thing for customers that get it. There's a CCAS product here for somebody that builds on it, is a thing I call tag analysis. So let's assume for the moment we're looking at post-processing a call. I'd actually want to do this live, but let's just assume we're talking about post-processing. Imagine having the ability to define multiple triggers within that call. So you could, for example, write a prompt like you would for a conversational AI agent, saying, on this call, do either of the parties sound stressed? Yeah. Or on this call, is somebody making a complaint? Yeah. And being able to stack loads of those up and process every call through all of those. So what you end up with in your vCon, in your webhooks, in some kind of filtering, of calls, is the ability for a supervisor in a call center, say, to have a wall chart of complaints by time, or to get an alert when an agent is stressed. And this is exactly the technology we'd use for the whispering to the old people. Have they asked for bank details? Is the old lady stressed? But you can imagine, just with that simple thing of us giving a call in vCon, webhook, whatever format, with tags, a bit like you'd give to a blog post or your email in Google, people can build things on that using those tags. And if it's in real time in a call center environment, for example, maybe the supervisor wants to barge in on a call where the agent is stressed and the customer's making a complaint. Or you go beyond complaint. Is the customer angry? Is the customer threatening? Is the agent really struggling? These are all just tags that you can.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, I can see a commercial option for that, where the analysis could show that if it's a sales call, that the person's ready to buy through some kind of sentiment analysis.
Well, there is
And if
that
you
as well, yeah.
Yeah, and if you pick up
I
on
tend to focus on, like, well, not the negative, but like protecting people and the negative
protect and
examples.
serve,
But you are absolutely right. And these tags could be, could be anything. I
Yeah.
had a call I had a call yesterday where I was ready to buy before the call, but I still had to go through the process, and I still had to answer a questionnaire so they could send me a video that was a unique case study for me, so that I could get to where I was before the call. You're right. And processing that call, somebody could have very clearly seen, just send this guy an order form.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and imagine if you're an agent and somehow like a green ticker tape comes across the bottom of your screen saying this person's ready to buy. I would ask them if they'd like to go ahead now, sort of thing.
yeah, well, one of the things we did, it's going back a few years now, with the financial services industry, was combating fraud in their fraud call centers. We would stream all sorts of data during the call, and that would pop up on the agent's screen exactly like you said. So this customer's calling from a UK mobile, but they're actually currently in Portugal. And by the way, they had a new SIM 3 days ago, and these would
Mm.
just be pop, 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 pop on the screen. The human's making the decision,
Mm.
but they've got this data, and yeah, this is an opportunity to do that in real time, not based on the metadata, but based on the actual conversation taking place within the call.
Nice.
So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
It's going to take us some time to get fully where we want to go, but the purpose of this podcast is to tell people where we're heading. So if it resonates with them, they can get on board, and they can ultimately be building things on what we're building.
Yeah.
So everyone's a winner, hopefully.
Yeah.
I think that about wraps up conversational AI. Unless I've missed anything that either of you want to bring up.
Not from me.
No, I think that finishes it nicely, and actually just leads back into, if you think back to the demo that I showed you just a while ago on the hosted virtual agents, that you recall the various sort of roles and predefined templates. They will That set of roles or available templates will grow as we add more functionality and capability into the back end, into the carrier services functionality. And this tag analysis, just and what we were speaking about there, where almost a ticker tape, a virtual coach, if you like, makes sense perfectly as another role there. Particularly in a call center environment, a sales coach, just a virtual someone that can sit in on a call alongside a human, actually just prompting. This, particularly if they're new and they're learning.
Yeah,
This
in
person's ready.
fact,
This call is ready to buy. Yeah, send
yeah,
me the order form.
building on what you're saying, Charles, I can see a set of circumstances where actually the contact center manager or the contact center coach only gets flagged by the AI when somebody's not responding to the AI coaching they're getting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There's a big conversation that we all need to have with regard to AI. You've got people that and there's examples been in the press that have said, "Wow, this AI thing's great. Let's get rid of 600 people in our call center," and it all goes horribly wrong because the agent can't do what the human does. There's other people, saving money and automating processes in a way I think a little bit scary when you look at the level of hallucination and things are out there with the tools that they're using. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got some of our competitors that I should use the air quotes, or one of our competitors that has put out an AI policy basically saying we'll never use it. And I think that's kind of Luddite behaviour. What people are scared of with AI is it taking everybody's job, and others see that as an opportunity that, hey, we can get rid of it, a load of jobs. But actually, the real opportunity for the foreseeable future is humans elevating their performance using AI to assist them. So if we can make a call center agent more productive, or we can make an old lady more protected by just doing what they're already doing, but with the help of AI, that feels like a massive win to me.
Yeah, the word that is getting used in that regard is augmentation.
Yes.
So rather than replacement, you're augmenting people's abilities.
Yeah. We've got a thing internally now on our Roam, where they've introduced everybody in the business has a virtual assistant, and it's AI. And so this morning, neither of you were online at the time, and I can say to mine, when Charles pops up, can you send him this for the podcast we're recording later, or let me know when David appears, and various things like that just make things massively more powerful. I don't have to keep looking, see if you're in yet, or remember to send you something at a certain time. I can just do my bit and leave the technology to it. So massively exciting. But there is one more thing, not in an exciting Steve Jobs kind of way
But wait, there's
necessarily.
more.
Final thing that's on the list is the astute will have seen that WhatsApp have launched calling. This isn't calling in the way that I would ideally like, which is the ability to reach any WhatsApp user over SIP or receive calls from WhatsApp. It's much more controlled and opted in than that. Rather like Teams, somebody can opt a number into WhatsApp for business, and then that number can receive calls through WhatsApp. Just wanted to let people know this is on our radar. This is a logical skewer in the potato, alongside Teams, alongside SIP, alongside some of the others. So that's on the list as well, which I think will be exciting, certainly for end user businesses, where they kind of use WhatsApp, but they still have to have the phone. So the ability to bring things together there, and everything we've talked about is relevant there, just like it is with any other skewer on the potato. You can have an AI agent on the end of your WhatsApp number. You can have call recording on it. You can have all of the other good stuff that we do.
Yeah,
So.
and even more with BYOC as well. It gets even
Yes,
wider, doesn't it?
very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have your business number with somebody else that you can't port. You need WhatsApp, you need Teams. Then Simwood can enable that for you.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, Charles and Simon, thank you very much for gathering. It's always an enjoyable time reviewing what's happened and looking to the future. And actually, dear viewer, if you've not had enough Simon, he did an interview with the carrier community recently, which is well worth watching, and we'll make sure that there is a link to that in the notes for this podcast as well. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll be coming back around next quarter. All the best.
Thanks all.
Thank you.